Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I know it feels a little bit like my home state of Florida in here right now, so we've asked them to turn the air down just a little bit, and hopefully they'll be doing that. But we have some water, I think, in the back of the room, so hopefully that'll help. Thank you for coming to this panel. I know I've been putting that out on social media, and a lot of you have as well, so please continue to do so during the panel, and I expect you all to ask questions as well. I'm hoping this becomes a little bit more of an interactive conversation. I've been doing enough talking this week, but I really wanted to express my gratitude to a couple of different organizations for allowing me to be here. It's kind of interesting that I am moderating a panel on how to launch your career in space, since I have been in my role for a total of 11 months. And so I hope that in addition to you all learning from this wonderful and diverse panel, I will also take away something. I work at the Space Foundation in Washington, D.C., advocating for civil, commercial, and national security space interests in Washington, our nation's capital. I also am here with the Space Generation Advisory Council, and I help to organize scholarships so that a number of young professionals can come to events like this. And finally, I wouldn't be here without the financial and career support of the Future Space Leaders Foundation, which has given me a scholarship to be here. If anybody has questions after the panel, I'm happy to discuss all of those organizations with you, because they certainly have helped me to get to my point. I also know that you all know how to read, so rather than read over all of our panelists' wonderful and impressive bios, I've decided to do something a little different, and I asked them each for a fun fact. So first, directly to my left, Dr. Foying he's tinkered with electronics his entire life. He's broken enough things that he knows now how to work them and build them and teach other people, but also really likes being in nature. And no, you are, sorry. So we have a feng shui master up here who's moved things around. So this is Dr. DePaula that I just described. So apparently everyone here is a naturist as well. My apologies. Bernard next to me has 3 children, as well as a moon lander, which he considers to be the moon probe, which he considers to be his last child. Liz from Airbus next to him has met the Queen of England twice, once as a child when she gave her flowers, and then later as an adult at a reception at Buckingham Palace. Kevin Stubbe actually met his wife at one of these events, and so if you have any questions about how to meet a loved one here, please talk to Kevin. We have Dr. Erin Freund, who actually has an asteroid named after her. So if you have any questions about which one and how you can see it, see her. Gianpietro did not want to ever learn German in school and has just married a German, so might be regretting that a little bit now. So thank you so much for bearing with me during that. But I would love if you would each start by discussing how you got to this point, the role that you're in currently, whether it was intentional, like some of us who really have always wanted to be in this industry, or you accidentally fell into it. I'm constantly surprised by people who tell me, I just happened into the space world. It just happened. So I'm curious about your path, and then a secondary question to that would be, was there an obstacle you had to overcome, and what skills and background did you use to overcome that? So I'll give this over to you first.
Oh, it's my turn. Okay, as a teenager, I was very much interested in going in the field, observe the stars, and travel, so I wanted to be an astronomer and a diplomat. But then I had to go to something serious, so I studied physics, engineering, and I launched my space career actually with a PhD where we launched a rocket. And it was a time where, in the 3 years of PhD, you could develop an experiment, launch it, analyze, and launch it again. And then I had to go 3 years in Chile to work at the European Southern Observatory, partly for my military service, but also as a postdoc. Came back in a French laboratory, but still had this passion for Europe, especially when I was in South America. I really loved Europe. So I joined the European Space Agency, ESTEC, the best space center we have in Europe. And I'm there. I started as a research scientist, went various level, was in charge of my baby, the Smart 1 probe we sent to the moon, but was a project as well, and chief scientist. And now I started a new career 3 years ago, where I was elected the chairman of the STEC staff. So I learned to exploit another part of my brain, to listen more to people that can apply to many situations in normal life as well, to help colleagues, and also to try to develop career opportunities for my colleagues and for the young professionals. And that's what later I would like to cover. What are the opportunities for developing, working in our training programs at ESA, but also going in the community and going back and forth, working on some of the ESA programs. So that's in short.
Thank you. I was always a space geek. I grew up on Star Trek: The Next Generation, and so I was going to be an astronaut, and we were going to have spaceships, and that hasn't quite happened yet. But I discovered when I was at school that there was a degree course in the UK called Physics with Space Science and Technology, and I thought, that's it, that's the one that I'm going to do. They only did it in 5 universities, so I didn't have to make any difficult decisions about which ones to put on the application form, because there was space for 6. During my degree course, I had the opportunity to do some amazing things, and so one of my top tips is to take advantage of everything that you can. I started with Airbus Defence and Space as soon as I left university as a thermal engineer. And then after a few years, I moved into future programs, advanced concepts. So we looked at an asteroid sample return mission and some of the other sort of early Mars rovers, things like that. And then I did a trip to Argentina where I discovered I was enjoying talking about my job a lot more than I was enjoying doing my job. So I went back to the office and thought, okay, how can I make this my career? So now I'm in marketing and communications in our Earth observation, navigation and science section. And I still have to know about the technologies, but I do get to spend my time just telling people what we do and finding new ways to tell the public what we're doing. In terms of obstacles, I'm not sure I've had any big ones, but I would say when you realize that you want to do something different or you're ready to do something else in your career, nobody else will do it for you. So you have to make the effort to go and find the people, to talk to the people, to see what you can do. And when you talk to enough people, eventually you'll get to where you want to go to. But if you sit back and wait, there is nobody else in your company who will just say, I know you're the one that we want to pick. So it's definitely, you have to go out and do it.
Right. So, like the two of them, I've always wanted to be involved in space since I was 8, 9, 10 years old. When I went to high school, though, I did not do so well in math class, probably because I never did the homework. So I was told I wasn't smart enough to work for NASA, to work in the space industry, and I kind of went a different path for a couple of years. And partway through university, I realized that space jobs aren't just engineering and science, but those are the cool jobs, I thought. So I tried to get back into math and science, and I had 1 year at university where I was taking general physics, general chemistry, and Calc 1, but I had never passed geometry in high school, so I skipped Algebra 2, pre-calc, trig, all that stuff. My head kind of boom. It was a rough year. And I got through that, though. I passed the classes and did a graduate degree from University of North Dakota, Space Studies, which I quickly learned was not really a technical degree. But through that, when I finished my master's thesis, I was told to submit your thesis as an abstract for the IAC. And I did, and it got accepted. And then somebody told me, actually, it was my stepfather, had said to submit it for the IAC. And then he said, as long as you're going to IAC, there's this little conference beforehand for young people and students called the Space Generation Congress. You should go to that. So I went to that, and that's actually where I met my wife in 2004 because she was there for the first time. And my stepfather ran a program at a NASA center that she was one of his students that summer. And he told his students to go to the same program. Space Generation and IIF roped me in really quick. So by the time I left IAC from Vancouver, I was the assistant manager of a Space Generation Congress. I was their delegate to the UN. I was their national point of contact for the US. And the list goes on. They really pulled me in quick. went back to the U.S., and at the same time, I had met the president of the IAF while I was here, and he had a small consulting company, and he called me about 2 months after the IAC and offered me a contract per diem job consulting with him. So did that for a couple of years while working a different full-time job, not in the space industry, and decided to go back to school again. I wanted to be a project manager for space missions. I knew I couldn't do the true technical work, but I wanted to be involved in it. And went to the University of Arizona because I was told you got to get a PhD in science to be a project manager at NASA. And so I went there. About 3 months into classes, I got a job on one of the science teams on the Phoenix mission because I had been a paramedic and a hazmat technician. And the interview kind of went, so can you solder? Yeah. Can you do plumbing? Yeah. Do you mind working in a clean suit all day? No, I'm a hazmat technician, that's what I do. You're hired. You're the test and integration engineer for TIGA. What's a TIGA? So I found out it's a science instrument on the Phoenix mission, and about 2 days into that job I realized he's the PI, I have no interest in doing what he's doing. She's the project manager, she's got a bachelor's in business, and she's doing what I want to be doing. I'm way over my head, I don't need the PhD that I'm doing. So I finished some courses, finished the work. We launched the Phoenix mission, it was awesome. And then I was unemployed, so I moved to California. It was an obstacle, took a while, but networking, partly from people I'd met here, partly from stuff I'd done for space generation, got me a job as a contractor at NASA Ames. And so now I'm 6, 7 years later, still there at NASA Ames, and I'm the deputy project manager for the Rodent Research Program, which is the program sending mice to the space station for biology research, both for commercial and academic drug research, but also for long-duration human spaceflight. So I get to work on a project that's the future of sending humans on long-duration missions, but also when I fall and break my hip when I'm 70 years old, falling off the stage here, the way they're going to treat me is the stuff that we're researching through that program right now. So the other big obstacle I have, which I kind of mentioned in the beginning, is being told no. I was told no probably a dozen major times in my life when I said, I want to go do this. No, you're not smart enough. No, you don't have the right background. No, you don't have the right skill. No, it's too hard to do that. And I either looked back at that realistically and said, maybe I'm not smart enough to do that, but I can do this that's right next to it. I can still go work on a space project. I can still go put a spacecraft on Mars, even though I'm not smart enough to be the engineer designing the landing system. So if somebody tells you no, don't take that hard, but reassess and find the path around the no.
Okay, well, I'm 25 years in space research, and I cannot anymore remember each step that detailed than Kevin. This means just I am old. I'm getting old. But I could actually not decide if I want to study only astrophysics and look at the stars, or if I want to do microbiology. And in this situation, I just studied both. And it came out quite handy after that. But right at the beginning, it was really quite tough, 40, 50 hours a week to try to do 2 studies parallel. And so I graduated actually with a master in molecular biology and with a PhD in astrophysics. And then there came the field of astrobiology quite conveniently along, where I was, of course, then one of the pioneers, and I really liked it. I worked at many different space missions, planetary science, astronomy, infrared satellites, Rosetta, one of the really, really amazing journeys through space, and also experiments on the International Space Station, which where you really need a lot of perseverance, in particular when you are young. And when I was about 10, 15 years in the field, I just had the feeling that scientists don't have enough voice in the decisions which are taken towards space missions, towards space activities. And I made another management study, and I used it in order to go to space policy. And that was a really, I think, really rewarding move, because I had the feeling I can convince politicians why those space missions are so important, why international cooperation is so important, why we should go there, and at the same time also have the trust of the scientists, you know, that there is a very good dialogue between the scientific community and politics and all the people which are in between. And I think that is a very, very was a very good combination. And through that, of course, I got once into the position of being the head of the Austrian Science Foundation. And that was a very interesting job, looking not only about space, but also doing, of course, medicine, life sciences, and also humanities and art. And of course, that broadens your horizon. And yeah, from there, I just got really headhunted to be the new head of the German Aerospace Center, which is an amazing job. And now I'm really back, not only 100% in space, but additionally also in the subject of aeronautics, energy, transportation, and security. And I think I worked very hard in my whole life. This is sure, but it was always ups and downs. And this is always what you have, in particular in a space career. You have always ups and downs. I had experiments exploding, which I think is mostly hard for the students when you have students which work on them. And then they are reflown and everything is fine. You send a mission into space and it takes 10 years, like Rosetta, where we wait anxiously, and then actually all those 10 years are forgotten because you get these amazing results. And if you come to the DLR booth, you can see all the details about the Rosetta mission, how we in Europe, with international cooperation as well, landed for the first time on a cometary surface. So there are obstacles on the way all the time, and particularly for me it was working interdisciplinary, continuously my whole life working interdisciplinary, and you have to convince people that you're either here or here. No, you are going your way, and that's important. And interdisciplinary research is something which is really crucial also for your generation, because one day you have to solve the not one day, already now you have to start to solve the global challenges, and global challenges are highly interdisciplinary, and you need to sit on one table, understand other people which are doing different subjects. You have to solve it together. And obviously also if you do management and if you do science, you are always a little bit between two chairs. But it's also very an enriching, sometimes it's an obstacle, but it is also very enriching. And I think today we need to be multidisciplinary, in particular space is a very complex endeavor. Okay.
Hello everybody. I think my path to space actually began early. I come from a city that doesn't have anything to do with space. So I figured out during the youth at school that if I wanted to ever have anything to do with it, I had to pay the price, so get out from it. And I landed in a place where at first, as a youth, I didn't really want to land in, but it was a place of opportunities, and I first, during the study, I took the chance to move abroad. I moved to Germany, where I actually found a job at the German Aerospace Center as a student, and that opened many more opportunities to find out other ways to foster my interest in space. And it's not easy to get into space, it's very hard, but I think starting as a student is the best option, and not only working alongside your studies, but it was for me fun to work alongside my studies, but also a rewarding job to see how I could actually follow my interest, even though I was not studying. I was working and I was having fun, and that is what was actually awesome about it. And I'm still doing it today, and I think this is like following our dreams is actually expensive. It's expensive in terms of price where we have to pay, and so if that requires to move somewhere else, that's, well, it hasn't have to be too bad. I mean, moving to another place is not a bad experience. It's always a new challenge, and it brings new opportunities, and it is fun to learn new things. And I'm really happy to be here and talk about this subject with you today.
Well, I always wanted to be an engineer. And as Julian said from the beginning, since I was a young boy or a young man, I used to tinker with electronics and used to tinker with motors and TVs. Many times my goal was to fix old stuff, but most of the time I broke them. And, or sometimes I was very curious and I want to see how things work. So I would take perfectly good appliances apart, or TVs or radio, and sometimes I couldn't put them back together because I didn't have the right tools. Take apart is one thing, but trying to put together is another story. So, but curiosity is what drove me. I was extremely curious. But over the years, I also learned something that was very important. I may not be as smart as many of you guys are here, or many of all you scientists sitting here, but I overcame my not maybe being so smart by working extra hard. So, okay, maybe it took you 1 hour to do your homework. I said, okay, maybe it'll take me an hour and a half, but I'll get the homework done. So I put the time. And another skill that I learned over the years, either maybe because where I come from or maybe because I was raised, I learned how to be very humble. I learned never to say no. Many times people would come to me and say, hey, would you want to do this job? I say, yes, sure, I'll do it. So learn how to be humble, because that will help you interact with other people. That will help you learn how other people do things. So if people come and offer you an opportunity, or if they ask you if you want to do a job, even if it is the simplest of the jobs, say yes, because that could open up additional doors. So, I mean, if you look back, for example, in my case, I mean, I came from a very small town in Brazil. I was born in Brazil. I was raised, I went to public schools in a small town. One day, my father used to work for the Air Force, and he had the opportunity that he was transferred or offered a position in the United States. So all of a sudden, I'm uprooted from a small town in the interior of Brazil. Yes, I had learned a little bit of English. All of a sudden, I had to speak English. All of a sudden, I had to graduate from high school in another country, in another culture. So, and essentially, the same thing that Kevin described happened to me. When I came to the United States, I barely could speak English. So, but I also didn't like to do homeworks, because in Brazil I didn't do homeworks. You know, I mean, yes, I'm not very proud to say that, but I was very fortunate to find a teacher who says, hey, you want to go to a good school, you need to do your homework. Okay, so I changed that. But also I had another teacher who came to me and says, well, you don't speak English well. You know, I don't know what you know, but you know, I think you should stay in high school another year instead of trying to go to college. I said, well, if I have to stay another year in high school, I'll go back to Brazil. I don't want to waste another year. So, I mean, I was ambitious from a point of view of time. Time for me at that time was very precious. You know, maybe today looking back, okay, maybe another year. So, you know, so I worked very hard, and I was able to graduate from high school. I went to college, finished college in the US, and got my degrees, and eventually I went, you know, after many paths, I ended up at working at NASA. But my goal was really to be an engineer, was to do electronics, was to do optical electronics and so on. I was interested in communications. But eventually, you know, as Pascal said, you learn many different skills. And when you go to work in space, you have to put all these many skills together. So essentially, working in space is a, let's say, a systems engineering of many different skills or different knowledge. So you have to learn many different areas to be able to work in space. And essentially today, as an engineer, I find myself, and as a headquarters, defending the scientists, because the scientists' work is very important to advocate how they do their science. But when they send me their material, it's so scientific that no one up my chain will understand. I say, guys, how can we justify this? How do you expect us to defend this? So here I am, the guy who was an engineer, trying to help the scientist advocate for his work. So it's very important then that you bring together many different sides of your academic training. Again, systems engineering of many different subjects, because that's what you really need to have. And as you, let's say, start more and more involved in the field of space, and that's what I learned after 25 years at headquarters, and as you try to put different projects together, the science and the engineering comes very close together, and you have to be able to understand how to merge. And these days, if you're also working on the human side, then now you have the human aspect of it. So, I mean, most of us, in my time at least, mostly for me was engineering and science, but more and more, you know, now we talk about sending human to Mars and so on. So that brings even another dimension to the skills that we have to put together to help people advocate, to help promote this kind of programs. So my recommendation to you is be persistent, be humble, do not say no to opportunities or jobs, even if it is the simplest job that comes up. Work extra hard. And patience, because many times we have to be patient with our mentors, with our bosses. And I mean, sometimes you have to say, yes, boss, that's what you want, you will get done. And you have do that job without any grudge. Just put your best into the job. Even if you don't quite believe what your boss wants, but that's what that particular organization or that particular, so, and if at the end it turns out, well, it's not quite coming out that way, and sometimes people say, well, wait a minute, it's not quite right here, then you step in and say, well, how about this road, or how about this option? So, again, but the three basic things, hard work, patience, being humble, is really what's going to help you do this, you know, and try to also master many different areas.
Thank you very much to everyone on the panel. As you can tell, we have a very diverse and dynamic and very passionate panel here who have all emphasized the importance of interdisciplinary education and experience. I know that we have a number of panelists, and so to get through that, you know, I want to make sure that we open this up for questions. So I've got a number here, but I would love to hear a question from the audience. Maybe we'll go back and forth. That could spark some conversation among our panelists. I ask that you each ask a single question at a time, and please keep the questions and the answers concise so that we can try to get through as many as possible. I know at least one of you has a question. I've spent the last week with all of you. I'll ask a question while you're all thinking. So I'm a lawyer, right? I went to space camp. I've been a long-time space fan, but I had no experience. You have all talked about the importance of getting that experience, but I found a barrier to entry in the field when I was finishing up my law school degree and trying to get a job in the industry. I was looking at different government agencies, for example, NASA, and at least at home, the way that the system works and you have to go through the federal hiring process, NASA has programs, right? As a student, you can get in, but as a young professional, it's a little bit different. So I'm curious to hear what opportunities are available within different organizations, and not everybody has to answer, or you can all give your, your piece, but just what opportunities are there for not only students, but also young professionals who are graduating or recently graduated?
Yes, so I would recommend that if you're a lawyer, that you have another study, have a dual studies, because there are many lawyers over the world, so we need to find a way to find those that are passionate for space. Now we have also to make an effort not only to attract those scientists, engineers that we need to build our rocket and instrument, but expand that to other population of, for instance, the artists, designers, which eventually can bring innovation. We need also to interest a larger part of the public to participate to our project. Now you said diversity is also, if you work within a team of engineers, that's great, but it's very important to have diversity elements, even a cross-cultural diversity, and at ESA we love that. It's complicated sometimes, but we have people coming from 22 member states, and we try to find common objectives, but we bring together our luggage, also where we are anchored, and that's bring a fun additionally. Now, in terms of opportunities, we have, for instance, in the ESA system, a program of internships. So you can apply for 3 to 6 months internships. Some of them we can propose you a bit of funding for your expenses, but mostly you do part of your studies there. We have also a very good young graduate trainee program, very competitive. We hire something like 50 young graduate trainees in the different ESA sites at ESTEC, the largest technology center, but also in the Spacecraft Operations Center, ESOC, in the European Astronaut Center, in the ESRIN, which is our Earth Observation Center, in our Space Astronomy Center in Spain, even at quarters. And there we have also some humanities stagiaires that could work, and it's competition, 20-1, typically. But you can persevere, because also if you do internship with some of our partners, like academia, universities, working in laboratories with industries big and small. For example, in ESA, the system is that the space family is much broader than ESA employees. We have 30,000 engineers working in our satellites. So clearly you should think of careers mostly going in this large industry or the academia. And if you don't like that, you can make your own industry. That's also some activities that we try to foster, give opportunities for startup, and we give guidance there. So there's a large landscape where science and technology are useful, but you need also to bring other skills. Team spirit, good values as well, sense of also diplomacy, and sometimes you need also a purpose, and have these values that you follow, and a lot of work, of course.
So, in America, a lot of people think space program, I want to go work for NASA. NASA only has about 15 to 17,000 employees, which sounds like a lot. But then you look at the rest of the aerospace industry in America. Lockheed Martin has 100,000 employees in America or more. When you look at how big the aerospace industry in America is, it's huge. So if you're looking for an entry-level thing, NASA may not be the way to go. There might be very, very limited opportunities at NASA. There's a whole industry there, and I'm sure the rest of the world is very similar. I'm sure, if you look at the European Union, ESA is a small percentage of the total jobs in the industry. And so, if you're looking for that while the space agencies are the really cool thing, look at the other, the rest of the players, or even start your own company. There's a lot of young professionals here at the IIC who started their own companies. And if you're here at the IIC, take advantage of this. You can find people here to help you find a job. So make sure you take advantage of that as well.
At Airbus, we do have graduate entry programs. We occasionally hire lawyers, but there are 2 lawyers in the UK, and there are 3,500 people that are not lawyers. So the job openings are much smaller. For the industry side, we build the spacecraft, we run the services, and so the most people that we take are engineers. Occasionally you get physicists like me, so we sneak in, but you then have to become an engineer. So if your passion is building science instrumentation or designing sort of new experiments, then all of that is done in academia in the universities. So that's looking at your PhD programs or research programs. But if you like the hardware and building things, then that's where industry comes into play. We also have internships, so when you're doing your studies or just afterwards. For Airbus, they're all on the website, but for the other European industry, they will do the same thing.
All right, thank you so much. Do we have a question from the audience? We have a couple. I see Daniel going up to the mic.
Hi, my name is... I can hear myself. Okay, my name is Daniel. I'm from Israel. I'm a master's student of aerospace engineering. And I think all of you represent right now the States and Europe. My question is, how can someone from Israel get involved in a major space industry? So Israel has a very respectable space industry, but it's mostly defense. I don't want to work in defense. I want to do exploration. I want to do the super cool stuff. So it's super cool. So how can someone from a different country, from Africa, South America, from Israel, get involved in your organizations?
Hi, Daniel. In the places I've been to, both the DLR and the Airbus Defence and Space, or Airbus itself, there is a big multicultural and multinational community. At Airbus, we have people working for more than 60 countries in the world, and I have a very good friend also he's from Colombia, and he came to Germany to study, and now he's in the youth program for Airbus after all his engagement. So the nationality in many big companies is not an issue. You can get in there. Just need to apply and be interesting for the company, and that's. But you already are, so that's not a problem.
I would say that for some of the big companies, especially when we have defense in, there are some hurdles that you have to overcome. Airbus likes you to already have a visa so that you can work in Europe. I'm not sure if Israel counts in that one. But there are the internships, which are much more open. You have to pass a security check, but then you can get involved. The agencies have much more open programs for students and then for interns. And once you're in and you know the people and you network, you'll find the people that can make the system work for you. So I would say, as in everything, it's as much about who you know as what you know.
So, to be specific, at ESA, for our staff program and for our traineeship program, they are focused to citizens of the 22 member states. But we have also some international program with some of the countries where we have agreements. So, for instance, we have an international fellowship program where you can come for 1 year. Now, defense can do good things. For instance, I've seen recently Pete Warden. He was in charge of Star Wars in the US. And one of the elements of testing some of these technologies was to send a mission to the moon, Clementine. And so maybe you can do that also from Israel Center. And Space IL, you have that. You could work on planetary defense. We have our colleagues now, they are studying concept of missions that are going to characterize asteroids. And that could be a good mission, future mission for militaries as well. So to enforce security of our planet, look at global challenges. Clearly, there are innovations from the military side that could be used for civilian purpose.
So I would just add, if you don't like all the direction that your country's going, change it. So, I mean, it sounds like a big ask, but I have met a guy who is now creating a Philippines space industry because it didn't exist. He was one of the emerging space leaders a few years ago. So it shows that everything is possible. After the IAC has been here, the government has been exposed to all these different things, and you can sell exploration as something they should get involved in.
I think also in the U.S. it's very difficult. I'll be blunt. It's very difficult. The laws make it that way. NASA does have a new internship program. It's about 2 months old, called International Internships. Talk to me after, and I can point you in the right direction for that. But you have your own space agency here in Israel. Most of you come from countries that have a space agency. It might be very small. And I've met 4 people in this world, I think, who are the first person in their space agency because they thought they needed it and they found a way to do it. But there's very little done anymore in space that's not an international cooperation. So if you want to work with NASA, figure out how to work for the Israeli Space Agency, figure out how to take a defense item from the Israeli Space Agency and the space industry, take that camera used for targeting weapons, turn it into a camera on an interplanetary probe. And then go work with NASA, DLR, ESA, JAXA to get that on the next Rosetta, the next Mars Pathfinder, whatever. But that's a great way to do it. Because when you look at all the space missions now, they're totally international. And find a way into the Israeli Space Agency, come to the IC, meet these people, and say, hey, I'm working on this camera, Pascal, that I think would be great on that Mars 2020 mission you're working on. I know you're not on Mars 2020, but
Got some business pitches going on up here on the stage.
but find a way to do that and come to the IEC there's other conferences like this. There's Coast Guard, there's other things, but it'll be easy for you to get into the Israeli Space Agency versus NASA, but then you can work with NASA and partner with that.
Thank you. I have a quick question, and then I see a hand up in the audience. Dr. Ehrenfreund, you've left academia to run an agency. You were teaching in the United States, and now you're running an agency over in Germany. I'm curious about, I guess, the difference in career path. A lot of the international friends and colleagues that I've spoken with this week, are really impressive and have several master's degrees. And, a lot of my friends here in industry, and this might be just a personal experience, they have, their bachelor's, maybe a master's. I'm curious what your perspective is on getting additional degrees versus getting work experience, if one is more important than another, when you should know what is right for you, and how you make that determination, and as an employer, what you see as more beneficial.
Well, I think this is a really individual question because I've been so long in academia and I'm still in academia. So nearly all the leaders of institutes at DLR, which are 32, are already associated with a university. And so is the board, the executive board. So we are still very, very close to a university and understand, because it's also for us to foster actually relationships. I think that how you pursue your career, this is really dependent on each person's, because I know people which have really 4 master's degrees, and that's amazing. But you can also really have 1 or 2 master degrees and then have a very, very good experience where you have a leap forward in your career and also in your knowledge, and you can do as much. Some people like to do more practical work, and some young people like to study. So this is very difficult to say. It is important that you have, I think, one main topic. It relates to the question which you had before. I'm a lawyer. I want to work in that. Should I change my career? Should I go directly in a space company? You have to be grounded in something, and then you branch out. That's important, and you continue your career until you feel settled, and then you're a space lawyer. Yeah, but you can also go into space, a company, and work and realize this is not. We have heard some examples. It's not really what I wanted to do. So it's important to take all these kind of opportunities. And I have to say that when when I was studying, there was not these possibilities of internships, which you have now. This is really great. You can travel all over the world, and it wasn't like this before. And now you have actually really some possibilities to make up your mind. Use those opportunities. And also, when I studied, there were not those incredible networks, you know, which you have, where you actually, you know, exchange views. And this is something what you really have to use. This is just shaping your way to your final career, where you finally will end up. And I would not give, you know, a common ingredient where you say you have to do that, you have to do that. It's really individually based, and you will know by yourself. But I think one ingredient which is important is you have to move through the world. You know, you have to be an international citizen. Space is really all over the world, and you have to have your experiences in a country different from where you studied.
Thank you, and I think Dr. DePaula had an answer as well.
Okay. I'll say the following. If you want to go into the academic, or if you want to teach, or if you want to really do research and you're going to spend all your life doing research, then it's very, very important that, let's say, you get a doctoral degree or a PhD. I mean, that's, you know, if you go into a university or an academic environment and you don't have a PhD, you're not treated or considered very well. You can be smarter than they are, you can be better than they are, but for whatever reason, having that PhD in that academic environment is it's a ticket to enter in there. Now, since most of you guys are young, and as Pascal said, you know, it's an individual base, and you have to look at your life, what you can do, and your financial resources, and your patience and persistence, because a PhD is nothing more than persistence. I mean, how many people I know, friends,
Some fun, yeah?
Sometimes, but it is a lot of ups and downs in a PhD. But I know a lot of people that came so close and never finished, that thesis never got written, or a little bit of research never got finished. And so it's persistence, because it depends on your professor, it depends on a lot of things sometimes. But when you're young, it's the best time for you to get your degrees in study, because now you have all that energy that you can sleep only 5 or 6 hours a night, or 4 hours a night, or whatever it takes. And so this is the time, if you're going to study, in my opinion at least, and if you're going to get your degrees, now that you're on that movement of studying and going to school and taking classes, do it now, because then later on, either you get married, you have kids, you get involved in a job where you don't have the time. So it's very important, and now you have the energy. You know, I'm not so sure I could go to a PhD now, even though I have some people at my age. So that's what's important. And like, for example, I mean, I got a PhD. Okay, my PhD was important for several years in my life, and maybe if I was working in one of the research centers or in academic, that PhD would be important today. But today I am at NASA headquarters, and there's a lot of other people doing the work I do. They don't have a PhDs. Yes, but I did learn some things maybe when I did my PhD. I learned how to be patient, I learned how to be humble, I learned you know, that the professor is the master, and you know, I have my masters. So I have to learn how to work with them, and so I'm sure that education and all that is very valuable for my job. But you know, if you say, do you really need a PhD to do what I do today? No, you don't. But maybe you need a lot of that training. So how you get that training, it depends. Now, if you're going to work to industry, you know, many times if you knock in the door of the industry and you say, I have a PhD, depends on the work they're going to do. They say, yes, I want you. Or so they may say, no, you're overqualified. And I have seen people not get a job because they say you're overqualified. So many times in the industry, they want you to grow with them. They want you to start at the bottom and, you know, with a bachelor's or a master's degree. Now, many times, at least, for example, in the United States, and I'm sure that's becoming the case in many countries, a bachelor's degree is no longer sufficient. So you need to have a bachelor's, you need to have a master's, and so on. Now, Like, for example, in the case of Julianne, she's a lawyer, but she wants to go work in a technical agency. You know, the same advice I gave to my son. You know, my son did not want to go get a technical degree. You know, you could say, well, I work for NASA. My son would really want to go to work for NASA. No, he didn't. He didn't want to do anything, but he loves to do technical work. And I keep telling him, now that you're young, also get a technical degree, get a master's degree or a bachelor's in engineering. Because if you have that, nowhere you go, even if you're going to be a lawyer, they say, oh, but I need you to be a technical person. You say, I have that degree. So, and I have seen people in NASA headquarters in NASA where they wanted to do technical work. They had the capability, but they were told, you don't have the technical degree, so we can't put you in that position. Either you have to go get the training, you have to go get the expertise and spend years in a NASA center or so on. Then you come back, let's say, to headquarters and you do this work because now you got the training. Go back and get a degree. So, I mean, when you are 40 years old and you really want to do work, you see that you can do it, but all of a sudden you're missing a bachelor's degree in engineering. You know, it's kind of challenging at that point to go get your bachelor's degree in engineering. So, again, it's personal, and you have to look at it.
Thank you very much. I think we have time for one more question. I saw this young lady in the back raise her hand a while ago.
Hello. So I'm Marianne Soumaniac. I'm a French postdoctoral fellow, actually in the Israeli space exploration program. So join us. We're working on building a UV satellite for discovering supernovae and transient events in the Weizmann Institute. And I have, I think, a pretty naive question. So in the academia, we have these things, like summer schools or workshop, so that if we want to try a slightly different field for 1 week, it's something possible even after our PhD. So one question I had is, do these things exist in your organizations, like short-term workshops or summer schools that scientists can join to kind of test things? And my other question was specifically to Pascal. So I sometimes feel that in the academia, after your PhD, there is this ticking clock that you have to publish a certain amount of papers to get a job, and you don't really have time to go try, for example, policy or things like that. So I was wondering at what stage of your career you did this move. Was it a one-way move, or did you feel you could go back? How did you do it?
I think you raised a really, really important point, and that is our publication. So if you're in academia, if you make a PhD, you have to publish, and you have to publish fast. In many countries, I have to say, in Europe, you cannot even graduate if you have not 4 papers submitted. That's, for instance, in the Netherlands. All my students, they had to submit 4 papers in order to graduate. They didn't have to be accepted and finished and impressed, but they had to be submitted. And this is the way how academia goes, because in the future you will be evaluated according to your peer-reviewed publications, about your citation index, your age index. And if you want to go that way, this is the way you have to go, because this is the way which brings you further, getting third-stream money, getting fellowships, getting from your postdoc, getting into a tenure-track position. This is something you have to go through when you want to have an academic career and also be independent. Because if you have all that, you can actually apply for your own grants and you can do what you want in academia. It's this freedom. It's different than in a company. You know, you can really shape your own career and your own science. I have done that. And when I switched to policy, I actually still did science, and I did both parallel until today. Yeah, that's not always easy, but I think you can also combine it. There is no one way or the other. Today, you know, you are free, and interdisciplinary science and also multidisciplinarity is important and is accepted. And I think this is the way you can shape your life. If you are successful, you can determine, if you work hard, you are successful, you can determine your fate.
Thank you very much. I think that's all the time we have for today, but hopefully some of the panelists have a moment to stay around. I wanted to thank all of you for your participation, and also a big thank you to Airbus Defence and Space for your sponsorship and support of SGAC. If you could all stay around for a moment, I think we're going to do a quick photo, because we love those but thank you to everyone involved, and please ask all the questions you want. We have Minu over here, the executive director as well, so for those of you who want to come to SGAC next year, please do. Thank you so much.